Hold on. Okay, so we are recording. Thank God. Got that right. We've got that bit right so far. Yeah, Phil here again with, and this is me interview, and not about me, but it's about Ryan, who you can see there. His name's Ryan Collard, and he's a young fella who's had testicular cancer, and quite a severe testicular cancer, if you want to be honest. So he's going to talk about what he went through, and we're going to talk. He set up Cancer Lads, which is a support group for men, or youngish men, or I suppose any age really, who've had cancer or testicular cancer or whatever, just for some moral support across social media. I'm sure he's going to tell us about that in a minute. So it was good to talk to somebody else who set something up, as I know I set up testicular cancer up. So yeah, there's right. Tell us where you're from, Ryan, and you crack on.
So I'm originally from Sunderland, but I'm living at the moment in Aylesbury, which is just outside of London. I was diagnosed with testicular cancer at 23 years old, and I was kind of like, I'd just moved out of uni. So I'd just finished uni. I'd moved out from Liverpool. So I went to uni in Liverpool. It was a case of, do I stay in Liverpool? Do I go back to the north? Do I go down south? And my dad's from down here. So it was kind of like, I'll still have like my own sort of social kind of like separate, like I didn't have to go back to being a teenager again. And I get to see my dad again as well, which is like not again, like he would always come back. Yeah. I just meant like I get to spend more time with him, which is quite nice. So I thought that was something different. It was never like the initial plan was never to be kind of long term down here, but sometimes you just don't know how things are going to pan out. And then I met Soph, and then I was diagnosed with testicular cancer like maybe 2 months after I met Soph. So I'm not even that probably, and yeah, just things moved pretty quickly from there really, and now we're married and we've got a house here, so pretty set now.
So originally from Sunderland area,
yeah.
Okay, Mackham, isn't it? Why are they called Mackhams?
Honestly, I don't actually know why we're called Mackhams, to be honest.
I've asked Jordan before why they call us Geordies. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just something you grow up knowing that you're a Mackham, and that's it's a pretty firm thing though. Like I remember being at uni and everyone saying at first I was a Geordie and being like, nah, I can't be having this the whole time, because that's like the obvious one. So basically everyone who knows it now knows there's a Mackham. Like,
so that's when I joined the army, I'd walk up and say, "You a Geordie?" And they go, "I'm a Mackham." Like, don't you ever call me a Geordie? And he just like, because I've got a Scouse accent, but I'm not a Scouser, so it's the same thing. Exactly. So yeah, you were diagnosed, like you said, quite a young age, really. What? Tell us, how did you get diagnosed?
So when I was 23, I'd literally just finished my first year as an NQT, which meant that my next year was going to be like my first year as a fully qualified teacher. I did have my own class the previous year, but with a lot of support and stuff like that. So I was very excited for that, and it was my first summer holidays, so I was wanting to go away, wanting to celebrate. And again, being 23, and at that point, I hadn't met Soph, so I was just going out with my friends all the time and doing like just having fun basically. And I just remember that time being a bit strange, and like I just felt like I had really bad back pain at that point, right. And I put it down to a lot like sport, because at that time I was literally training MMA twice a week. I was playing football again, training in the week, and then playing football on an evening. On a Sunday, one of the two. And then I'll go to the gym on my other 3 days. So I was exercising all the time, and I thought maybe I've just pushed myself a bit too much. Maybe I just need to relax a little bit, because when you've got the summer holidays as well, like you get more time to do more things. So I was just going a bit crazy really. And so I noticed this back pain. It wasn't going away. It was getting worse, if anything. I thought I've definitely not had this before. So one of my mates back home recommended I don't really know what they're called. Like basically those people kind of who align you back, chiropractor maybe. Yeah, like a sort of like an independent chiropractor. And I thought like that does like one-off sessions. You're not like tied into it like some kind of like monthly thing. So I was like, oh, I'll give that a try. Went there. They did kind of like some kind of cupping technique, some like thing where they electrocute my muscles, and I felt great afterwards. I've never felt so good afterwards. I was like, oh, that's cured as, I'm safe now. I feel brilliant. Yeah. And I went back home, and lo and behold, after all of the oils and all of the craziness had worn off, like the pain had came back again, and I was a bit like, oh, that's annoying. Like I genuinely thought that was the issue. So anyway, I went to a few different hospitals, and it was just like blood tests, went to GP, blood tests, and nothing was really triggered. Like all my, like, because it was just general bloods, all of that was normal. Everything else was pretty fine. And then at this point I had met Soph and we were going out and stuff. And then she came up to visit my family. And while she was visiting my family in the north, I was driving my brother to work so I could have the car to take her out and, you know, go and sort of visit the north a little bit. And the first sort of sign of something serious being wrong was when I was knackered in the morning. So he drove there. I was just going to bring the car back. And like literally just as he pulled up to his work, like I had this really strange feeling go over as well, like the right side, my right arm, my right leg, the right side of my body, like right side of my face, all just went numb. And it was really bizarre because it was literally just the right side. And I remember trying to say something to him and I was literally just slurring my words. Now, at that point, I'd only ever seen adverts for like strokes. So I thought I'd had some form of stroke. That's exactly what I thought. And Sean was like, "You all right?" I was like, "Don't know, it was a bit weird." And he was like, "It was, wasn't it?" He was like, "Let's go and get you some water." So he went into his work, came back with a bottle of water. And I was just a bit like stunned, really. Had a drink, whatever. Rang. I think I rang my mum or dad on the way back and was like, "Just had this really weird episode." They were like, "Right, we'll keep an eye on you. Go from there, bad guy." And then the next day did exactly the same thing, and literally around the exact same time, the exact same thing happened. And I was like, "Nah, this is freaking us out now. This is actually quite scary." I don't know if it was just the position I was sitting in the car, because I was sitting in the car with my legs up, like both my legs up, and I wonder if that was like, you know, pushing on a nerve or something that was triggering it. But that was that really threw us off. And I remember again ringing my mum and dad and was like, "This has happened again. Like it's a bit scary." I think I cried. Actually, I was a bit scared. I was a bit panicked, to be fair. And they were like, "Right, just go to your local walk-in. You know, they'll sort of seat you, whatever." And I went to the walk-in and they didn't have any appointments. So mum was like, "Right, I'm taking you to the hospital." So she ran us up the hospital. And again, on the way to the hospital, the same thing happened. So it was like, it was just really weird. It seemed to be happening quite a lot. And it was like, I got quite freaked out by it. So then I went into hospital and they put me on like an IV drip. After that, I felt fine. I don't know, like they just sort of replenishing my body or whatever. I don't know, but like I felt fine. They said that they think it might be a neurological problem with my brain and a separate like back problem. So they, I can't remember which hospital now, but one of the hospitals actually gave me like some kind of like heat pad that you stick on your back for the back pain.
Yeah.
So I had that on and I was like switching them every often and so on. And then they told me to go to the GP to ask about an appointment for like the brain, maybe epilepsy or something they thought at the time. So I did that. And I remember seeing in the midst of that, there was an advert I saw again on Facebook, something about prostate cancer. But some of the symptoms I was having, I was like, "Oh, that sounds like," I'm just going to ask the question. Like, I just want to see it. So I remember seeing it to the GP and I said, "You know, could it be prostate cancer? I'm having this and that." And she literally just laughed in my face and was like, "Oh, someone your age, like there's no chance, basically." Right. So I was like, "Oh, okay." That made me feel a lot better. I was like, "Okay, I feel weird, but like you're seeing it, you know, I know that's not all cancers, but like it just made me, I thought that would have triggered something if she thought, oh, it's not that, but it could have been this. I thought it would have triggered something, but it didn't. And she seemed to kind of blow off any kind of serious thing like that quite quickly. Anyway, the neurological appointment was not until like, she said it was going to take like 90 days. And that was at that point I was freaking out because I was literally passing out every day at that point. Right. And I was thinking to myself, how am I going to go back to work? How am I supposed to like teach kids 4 and 5-year-olds? And literally, what happens if I just pass out in front of them? Like that would be the most terrifying thing ever for a kid to experience. And obviously, I feel like when you're thinking about it more, like it happened more the more I was thinking about it. If that makes sense. Yeah. So anyway, again, my mum was like, "When you need to go for another blood test," so we went to the hospital down here in London, near where I was living, called Mount Vernon. And just as I did a blood test, at that point, I was really like not myself again. The pain in my back was crazy. Like I just felt like on edge, and I was moving like really sheepishly. I just wasn't myself. And my mum was like, "Let's go and get you some food. You haven't really eaten properly for a little while." So after my blood test, we were walking down the bank. And as we were walking down the bank to get some food, I literally, again, the same episode happened again. Mum literally had to call an ambulance, which seemed really bizarre because we were literally just next to a hospital. So she was called. I found it really strange, but at the time I had no concept of what was going on. But she's like, I didn't know what to do. I just freaked out. And I remember just like at that point, like at the first few times I went numb, like I was going numb, but I wasn't passing out. But like towards the end, there was points where I was literally going numb, and then I would just black out. And that was the scary part, because obviously then I just didn't know what was going on. And I woke up again in a different hospital, and we were just like in a room. I remember seeing loads of beds everywhere. I remember seeing like loads of people just on beds, but like just in the corridors and stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to be seen here. And we were there for ages, and it was literally like I must have seen like genuinely 3 or 4 doctors all came in asking me the same questions. I thought, I've answered this. Do they not speak to each other? Like they've literally asked me the same question. It's a different person, but they're all asking me the same thing. And like, it was really awkward as well, because they were asking me things like, have you had any STDs and all this? And I was like, I don't know, like as a young lad, when you feel like people are asking you those things, it almost feels like they're kind of like accusing you of something. And especially when you're with your parents, I was just a bit like thrown off. Yeah. And I was just like, this is really awkward. It almost made me feel like it was something that I'd done, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was just really like wanting to leave, to be honest, but I knew that like I needed to leave with answers, to be fair. And it was like the last lady who came in, she was like feeling my stomach, and she was like, oh, I can feel something there. And I was like, oh yeah. She was like, have you felt it before? I was like, no, I don't tend to like kind of feel that, like my stomach kind of thing. And she was like, oh, well, let's just put you down for like a scan anyway and see how it goes, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, basically from then, that's when they came up, and you could see they were like, how is nobody told? Like, because I told them that I'd been seen so many times and had so many blood tests, and they like came back, and then you could see that something wasn't right, and they were like, almost like, how has nobody said this before? And it was literally, yeah, you've been diagnosed with testicular cancer. But they were very kind of like, but it's okay, it's okay. Out of all the cancers, this is the best one to get. It's a good survival rate. And I like at the time I kind of appreciated it, because I was like, oh, okay. Because you hear cancer and you freak out. At 23, I was like, wow, like I've only ever seen like thick people on TV who are like, they don't survive, and it's like stories, and you think this is absolutely horrendous. Like it wasn't really common on social media or anything like that. So, well, it might have been, but it was not in my little bubble, if that makes sense. And yeah, for them to say that really kind of like made me feel a bit more relaxed. Like I did feel a bit more relaxed. But obviously, like they don't then explain what you have to go through to get to that point of being cured. I know they never will tell you that you are, but coming out the other end and not needing any more treatment, like they don't tell you what potentially you could go through, or what I've ended up going through is not in a million years what I expected from that initial kind of like, this is what you've got, if that makes sense.
So was yours unknown origin, or did it start in the testicles?
So it started in the testicle, yeah. So it started in the which side is it? Yeah, it started in my left testicle, then it had spread to my groin, and then to my stomach, and then I had like little nodules around my lungs, is how they described it to us.
You had no pain in your no lumps, obvious lumps in the...
So that was the strange thing. That was the thing that threw me off, because I was like, I'm pretty sure if I had testicular cancer that was this serious, like I would know how it, like I would know, I would feel a lump and whatnot. And I remember them taking us down for the at this point, after I was diagnosed, they took me to the scan where they put the gel on, whatever that's called, and yeah, the ultrasound. And that one's a bit more personal, and you find out there and then, because they can literally show you on the screen. And I remember like thinking, like I've never had any pain, I've never felt anything. Like I almost felt guilty, because I was like, how have I missed this? And they kind of showed me where it was, and even after they showed us where it was, I couldn't for the life of us feel it. I couldn't for the life of us feel it at all. And I was like, wait, if this is what it's gonna, if this is what it is, if this is what this late stage cancer is, and I can't even feel the bloody thing, I can feel it more in my stomach where it's spread than there. Do you know what I mean? Then it's just, I feel like, and for most people, luckily, like it is quite obvious. Like obviously when I got into my brother, like his was a lot more obvious. But for me, like back pain, right side going numb, blacking out, which they said in the end was just down to like where the tumor was, it just pushed on a nerve basically, and kind of like shutting off that side of my body. But like, it would never in a million years would associated that to testicular cancer. So I was very kind of like baffled when they came back and said, I thought maybe some kind of cancer in my stomach or something, but like testicular cancer, I was like, what? How's that a thing?
So you were stage, I mean, you were stage 3 because you had it in your lungs as well.
Yeah.
So that, that's pretty. I mean, was it non-seminoma?
Yes.
Yeah, because you're quite young. If anybody's watching, the younger lads usually get the non-seminoma, which is the quite aggressive one, and the older folks get the pure seminoma, which is it's still dangerous, but it spreads slower. Luckily, I've had both. So I could testify to that. I mean, to be honest, I mean, when I had my first one, I didn't have any pain in my testicle either.
Really?
You know, and I had a bit of back pain, and luckily got it quite early. But they'd be surprised actually how many lads I've spoken to say, "Oh, I had no pain," in the testicle.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, a lot more do say I get a bit of backache. Yeah, some lads don't get me wrong. Some lads do get a pain and a swelling in the testicle. It's quite severe.
Yeah.
It's fast. It depends which type, obviously. But yeah, you said we'll go on to your treatments in a minute. But you also mentioned then that your twin brother also had testicular cancer.
Yeah.
So yeah,
he literally came down to, obviously after the news and him being in some of the media down in London, he literally came to visit us like straight away basically. And once I got the news, he wasn't there when I got the news, but he came down like straight after that, and I was going to be starting chemo in the next couple of days. So he basically stayed with me in hospital. Like he slept over on the floor overnight. It was like helping me to the toilet and stuff. Because at that point, it was really strange. It was almost like I'd heard the word cancer, and my body had almost shut down even more. I remember being in hospital, I could barely even walk to the toilet. He was carrying me to the toilet, and I was being sick, like kind of like this, I don't know, like weird toxic fluid. And at this point, I hadn't even had any treatment, so it's weird. My body almost changed when I heard what my diagnosis was. But anyway, he came down for that, and he stayed as long as he could. Obviously, had to go back to work. And then when he went, literally like after a week or so, when he went home, he then woke up the next day and his testicle had swollen twice the size. So again, like you were seeing, like the other side of it, like what you expect. So he was like, "Oh, this isn't quite right." He didn't say anything to us at first because obviously he didn't want to like panic everyone, but he knew he had to go and get it checked. So he literally went to the GP the next day, and he told them about me, and he said that they only feel like, he said that we're going to send them home with like antibiotics or something at first, but because of my situation, they said we'll do an ultrasound. Lo and behold, they did the ultrasound, and they said that he had testicular cancer as well, but at the kind of like earliest stage possible. And so this was like literally 2 weeks after my diagnosis. He was literally diagnosed like 2 weeks afterwards. So my mum and dad are literally like beside themselves. I'm lying in bed at this point. I think I've just had my first round of BEP, absolutely comatose, and my mum and dad are like crying on the phone. I'm like, what the hell's happened now? And then they turned around and said, Sean's got testicular cancer. I was like, nah, what is happening? What is happening here? How is this even possible? So he was like, my mum and dad, like, who goes home? Who stays here? Do we both go home? Like, what happens? And he was like, honestly, don't worry about it. His partner's called Sophie as well. She's like, I've got Sophie here. Like, she's looking after us. It's not like the same. It's not going to be the same as Ryan's, I don't think. He just needs to have the operation and like get it whipped out. And then he's just going to be on maintenance. So it was a case of like, they were like, right, well, we'll stay here while Ryan's going through the chemo, blah, blah, blah. And, obviously we'll just keep checking in on you as often as we can. So they did that. He had the operation, had it whipped out, and then was kind of under maintenance for a while. I mean,
I know it's more common than identical twins. It is more, not massively common, but it's more common for if you've got an identical twin for one of you to get it, two.
But the strange thing is as well, like we're not identical twins, like we're kind of like two separate eggs. And we're also, they also did like a genetics test because they found it weird, and the genetics test came back, and according to them, it wasn't down to genetics, which in my mind, I still believe that it is for some.
So you're not identical, no? They'll be our twins.
Yeah.
It's great, yeah, because I know a fair few twins. So I've got a twin brother as well.
Really?
I don't know if they're identical or not, but yeah, I mean, it's slightly more common, but for both, it's strange. And I've read that it's something to do with one of, say you've got your brother. I'm not saying your brother, but one slightly develops faster, and the smaller one's testicles develop later.
Okay.
Born at the same time. maybe your test scores are 3 weeks underdeveloped more than your brother. I'm not saying that's what apparently.
Yeah, interesting. It's
Well, you know
interesting.
what? I've never, gosh, you know, like a swing, both of you together. Oh my,
Yeah. I
you're
mean,
that?
it gets a little bit stranger in the sense that, like, when my treatment then ended as well, like, so like a year later after all of my treatment, again, he came down for the operation that I had, and he was under maintenance at that point. So I literally just finished my operation. We were all celebrating together. Like, he was helping me like take my first steps again after the operation, all that kind of stuff, you know. And there's like pictures of us in hospital together, just watching football and shit like that. And then he obviously then had to go back home. So he stayed with us as long as he could. He went back home, and he went home to a letter that literally was like, we're expecting you in for chemo on this date. And he was like, hang on a second, like, this is I, you know, and hasn't been told anything. This is strange. He had just had his recent scan, so he was a bit like, I wonder if that's linked. And he rang them up, and obviously there'd been like a miscommunication at the hospital. Someone had said that they'd spoken to him, but they actually hadn't. And yeah, he'd basically, on his previous scan, they'd noticed that it had risen a little bit and it'd gone over that 1 millimeter mark. He always had this nodule, but it had gone over like the mark that it was now the way they will do something. And then so just when we thought everything was finished, he then needed to start his course of BEPS. So then he had a round of chemo as well. And he didn't really react too well to the chemo. Like, his every time after chemo, he just reacted to it, and he was just violently sick everywhere. Like, it was just, he always ended up back in there because he just didn't react very well to it at all. Whereas in terms of, like, for me, obviously the chemo was horrendous, but I never reacted to it like that, if that makes sense. Like, all of the medication and stuff stopped me from doing that. I mean, there was time, but nowhere near to what his was like.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll talk about BEP in a minute, but yeah, everyone, I mean, I never talk about, but I will now. I mean, when I was on my first lot of chemo, way back, can't remember what year. Well, on my second round of BEP,
Yeah.
I had a heart attack, went up the tunnel,
Really?
white light and all that.
Oh my goodness.
Got me going again, and went into saw the bright light, and but I was really peaceful for about. I remember being very peaceful in this room. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I went. Have you ever, Ryan? Have you ever been where you feel really sick and then you put your fingers down your throat to make yourself? You get that lovely, cool, calm feeling. I had that, my heart started jumping around. Apparently, I said to the nurse in the bed, because I'd been taken into hospital because I'd done my second round of chemo, and my heart started jumping around like a fibrillation. I was in the heart ward on the machine, and don't let anyone be scared by this. This isn't chemo, by the way, if anyone's watching. I said to the nurse, "Can I stand up and go for the toilet?" And she goes, "Well, I'll help you." So I was stood up, and by this time I was bald. You remember?
Yeah.
I was bald and lost, and I just collapsed on the floor. And I remember it being daylight, and when my heart started working again properly and all that, and I came around, it was dark.
Oh God.
I remember the nurse or the doctor looked exactly like Drew Barrymore, and I thought, if this is heaven and they're all like Drew Barrymore,
I'm in a good place.
they looked at the heart monitor, because I had a heart monitor on, and the heart doctor come up and go, "I'm not sure what's happened there. Your heart went into fibrillation really badly, and it stopped, and you were dead, right? But then while we were pulling you towards a bed to try and resuscitate, your heart started again in normal rhythm again."
Oh wow.
But I went into this room. It was all quiet. Felt really peaceful, like that cold, lovely cold sweat. And I felt the lights coming down, and I felt someone touch my arm, and then I woke up.
That's terrifying, and like you'll never forget that feeling as well. Like that'll literally live with you forever as well.
And I don't mention it much, obviously, because I do, like you do, I do a lot of support for testiculars. I'm not going to say, "Oh, by the way, BEP, you could have a heart attack."
Yeah, no.
They think it was just a reaction to the BEP. They actually said there's nothing wrong with your heart, because I did a heart scan and everything. But I don't talk about that much, to be honest with you, because you know you've been through quite a lot. I'll because people start thinking, Nothing.
Yeah, no, I know, and this is the thing. But I mean, it's interesting because the thing is with like with cancer, it's not, it's never or very rarely the actual cancer that kills you. It's the treatment.
Yeah.
It's the infections. It's the sepsis. It's the, like you said, things like reacting to the chemo that literally end up killing people. That's the scary thing, and like it's
Yeah, this is why younger people do better on chemo, even though a lot in different types of cancers it's
yeah,
harder to treat. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, let's talk about BEP. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm lucky enough to have had BEP first time. And then when obviously when my cancer came back in 2015, I went on to EP, 4 rounds of that. So I sort of knew what to expect, but I wasn't happy about it. Don't get me wrong. But how did you get on BEP? The fit?
So it was strange because I didn't have BEP as in how usual how generally people have BEP, if that makes sense. Because I know Sean's was like the general. You normally have like 9 weeks of BEP. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is it something like that? So I had it as like a starter. I had it for like the first, when I very first started, I had it for the first 5 days.
Right.
And after that, they started me straight onto something called Gem Tip. But
Right.
that had a lot of the it had a lot of the drugs like cisplatin that you have in BEP anyway. So I just think it's like a modified version, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was the cisplatin that killed me more than anything. I used to dread that bloody bag. It's terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, it's you probably agree with me, Ryan, but people say to me, "What was BEP like?" And we're both sitting here, and we can't explain it really, can we? It's. I remember I remember I was never in any pain at all, never any pain. I was just absolutely worn out all the time, just so tired, and especially I remember going for a wee upstairs. By this time I was pale and I was lost my hair and I was skinny. I remember going for a wee upstairs and having to lie down on the floor in the bathroom for half an hour to get the energy to go back down again. I mean, I know tip what is a strong one. I know that. Because obviously you were stage 3, so they needed to get you done or dusted as soon as possible. So if anybody's watching this, don't worry about chemo. It has to be done, but most about 50% don't need it now because a lot of people find it early, as in the old days it was near enough for everybody. But they do a lot of surveillance now where they wait and if you don't need it, you won't get it. In the old days, they'd give you it just in case, But
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, you've obviously you went through all that chemo when you were stage 3, and luckily, obviously, because you sat there, it did the job. But then you had to go and get all those lovely lymph nodes ripped out, yeah, for the operation.
Yeah, well, just before the operation, so I had a stem cell transplant,
Right, yeah,
because they had, so the chemo again, like I reacted, like my body reacted really well to the chemo, and like we're saying, I know like these stories of chemo do sound scary, but they are so essential.
yeah,
But my body reacted really well to the chemo, like everything was shrinking down, but like it got to Christmas. And at this point, they said I might be done by Christmas as well. So this is another thing I'll tell people, is to never get sort of hung up on that end date, because that bloody end date moves more than you will ever know. As soon as you need a bag of blood or a bag of platelets, then you're knocked weeks back, and it can be disheartening if you get stuck up on an end date like that. And that's what I felt. I felt like I was a little bit misguided in that sense.
yeah,
But anyway, it came to that point, and they said, right, everything's gone well, like we expected. Everything's gone down, everything's shrunk. And I was like, oh, brilliant. Am I going home? What's the situation? Like, oh, but like, we're going to offer you the stem cell. This is like the golden ticket to cure, is basically how it was kind of like explained to me, if that makes sense. And I feel extremely lucky to have it. I read into it. Not a lot of people are offered it, especially not a lot of people with testicular cancer are offered it. A lot of people I read up had it was all blood cancer patients. Like it's normally a treatment for blood cancer. So I was a bit like, well, why me, and why for this situation? But I wasn't, at the time, I didn't really question it. I just thought, you know what, you're the expert. You think this is going to be my opportunity for cure. I'm 23 years old. I want to be cured because I don't want to, I don't want to die young. I've still got lots of living to do here. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. And generally they offer two stem cells. I didn't know that till later. So like they want you to do one, and then they send you off and get you to come back to do another one. But I only did one, and that is genuinely 3 weeks of it's like torture. It's like genuine torture. Like it's just, you're blasted with chemo to the point where you're new until you're literally zero, and then they put the stem cells back into you, and then you do start to pick up a little bit from there. But like there's like there's a period of a week where you're literally just in fairyland. Like you don't feel like you're there. You're just an absolute zombie, and it just doesn't feel human. Like it's really, I can't, again, it's one of those things that you said, it's really hard to explain. Can't really explain it, but it wasn't nice at all. Like you get, the mouth ulcers where you literally can't speak, or even breathing hurts. You're breathing and it's just, your mouth is just in pain, and it goes all the way down your throat. So everyone is like, oh, just get some ice pops. So I just lived on ice pops the whole time. The nurse would just keep bringing in ice cold water and ice pops, and that's all I remember having when I was in there. And yeah, it was a scary experience. I had a kind of an experience where there was one night where, again, the lights went off, but I didn't know what had happened. I still don't really know now. I think I just got a temperature, and my temperature had spiked.
Yeah.
But they're very kind of on it in there, in a sense that, like, they come in always wearing like the white gowns. Like it's almost like COVID, but before COVID. Like I had a full experience of COVID before COVID. Like they had masks on, the masks, gowns, gloves, like they were fully prepared for everything. But it was just a bit scary. It felt like you were a bit of a science experiment. And then they came in, they would thaw your stem cells. Now for me, because I wasn't a blood cancer, I was lucky enough to have my own stem cells. Yeah. So they could use my own stem cells. And then they put that in, and yeah, like obviously thankful that it worked, and things went really well. But I was just left a mess after it. Like I could barely stand, like my legs were just so weak. My hearing became a bit of an issue after that. Like my neuropathy was horrendous after it. I've still got these issues to this day. So it just goes to show like how strong that was. And yeah. I think because I went into it so weak as well, like it literally just destroyed us. I feel like I've seen other people go into it from a healthier position, and they haven't been left with the same issues, which is great. But because I feel like I went into it at such a low point, that it just completely destroyed me even further. And then they offered me a second one, and I literally turned it down. I never thought I'd ever turn down treatment that I thought would save my life, but I just couldn't do it, because I thought, even if I do go for this, like, what's my quality of life going to be able to be like after this? Like now I'm lucky that I said no to it, because I'm at a point now where I can still do things. Granted, it's nowhere near the same level I would have been able to do it before, and it can be frustrating, but I can do things, if that makes sense. So I'm glad I said no to that last one, because I just don't know where I would have ended up, or what position I would have been after it. And then it was after there where they were like, yes, it's worked. So I was like, brilliant. And they were like, oh, but you've still got this inside of you. So they were like, so we need to operate on you to make sure that they get it whipped out and whatever, so it doesn't have any chance of like regrowing or anything.
I mean, anybody who's unsure about testicular cancer, it's quite rare to get that advanced, like Ryan was. I mean, Ryan was obviously stage 3. Most men don't need stem cell treatment. I know a few who have, some quite severe like that. I won't name names, but yeah, I mean, it's very rare to get to that stage of, because you obviously have very advanced cancer. You have to go through all that. Luckily, most lads don't. But yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I mean, I had chemo, and that whacked me out. I think both times. To then go on to the stem cell treatment, and that is hats off to you, mate. But then obviously
stem cells just more chemo, but it's just like, it just seems to be like more of it at the same time, if that makes sense. I remember just being on normal chemo and having like the line in my arm, and it was like that. Like this time I needed 3 ports so they could like put 3 bags in at the same time, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it is just chemo, but like it's just like I don't really know how to describe it. It just feels like more in a short space of time.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be overwhelming for someone, especially who's not a TC patient, because actually, I know there's a lot of cancers that you maybe go in for treatment once a month, or you might just have the tablets. And I think for TC patients, it's very intense. It's a shorter one,
Yeah.
I think we would prefer that. You would much rather intense for a shorter period of time than less intense for like years of your life. I don't know. It's that balance, isn't it? But
Yeah, I mean, it's an aggressive cancer. I know it is one of the most survivable, but it is one of the most aggressive. I mean,
yeah,
especially in young men. I mean, anything that's hormone based in younger people is usually a lot stronger.
yeah,
And for some reason, when Professor Einhorn invented the BEP or and the equivalent on and everything that's come after it, it works. I mean, it's some cancers are need smaller doses over a period of time because it's less aggressive. But the main thing is because testicular cancer, especially non-seminal, which you had, is so aggressive, it needs aggressive chemo. If it's been proven with pure seminoma, which is slower, that they are going into carboplatin now more than BEP or EP
okay,
treated because it's slower. So slower treatments, less aggressive chemo. I mean,
yeah,
carboplatin's being used more now. It's less toxic.
yeah,
Maybe I don't know, Ryan. In 10 years' time, they might just be using carboplatin on anything and got rid of. I mean, carboplatin, there's cisplatin. You've got to always have cisplatin, but they are sort of slowly going over to less toxic. Looking at ways of we can cure this cancer with BEP, but is there any way we can cure it when it's not so toxic long term for
yeah,
what you've got?
yeah.
Obviously, I've still got the side effects, and I've 20 years, but I don't worry about them anymore. But yeah, I think because especially non-seminal, I mean, like you said, you had back pain and it had gone straight through your body pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and you couldn't find a lump of, and it is a very aggressive cancer. That's what people forget, and that's what people don't realise when testicular cancer is the one to have, maybe, yeah, but it also leaves, like, lifelong problems.
Yeah,
So it's not, and we are, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you're exactly the same as me, Ryan, that you're so grateful to still be alive.
100%,
But
100%.
we do have our problems afterwards, like you said.
Yeah,
But let's talk about you had to have the operation. Some lads people watching this, the tumours are left. They might be dead in the body, or they haven't gone down to the normal side of the lymph nodes. So they have to have an operation where they basically rip the stomach out and and cut them out and put the stomach back. So you had that operation, and how was that?
yeah. It was as expected. Really, it was pretty terrifying. Like that was the thing I was most scared of. Like in terms of like having like that fear for something.
Yeah,
Stem cell, I didn't really know what I was going into, and it was just kind of like chemo that I'd been used to. So I didn't really necessarily have the fear. I was just like going with the flow. But like when you know you're going into an operation that's going to be hours long, what they tell you what they're going to do, they tell you what potentially could happen. They could cut through this nerve to stop this. They might have to remove a kidney because my tumor was wrapped around the kidney.
uh,
They tell you all these things, and you're kind of sat there and you're going, right, okay, like this is quite scary. And I kept myself distracted up until the point, and then it was like the moment of going down into it. Like I remember that was probably the most scared I've ever been in my entire life, and I was just hugging and kissing my family and sort of like, what if this is the last time I see you? I mean, this is obviously you think of like the extreme things, unfortunately, and actually like doctors and stuff are great. I don't think it's like the mortality rate of that type of operation isn't exactly super high, but it's just scary. Like it just felt really scary. And yeah, I just remember going into it like being absolutely terrified. I remember waking up and I was like in like a room, like in the high dependency room with a bloke at the end of my bed, kind of just like on a computer. I remember just opening my eyes and seeing him just kind of like look at me like this, and then kind of go back to typing his notes. And I was just there a bit spaced out, like what on earth is going on here? Like you have like a pain thing that if you feel in pain, you can just press it and it like it
oh, the
eases.
morphine, yeah, the morphine.
Yeah, it's quite nice. But it's strange because I remember like waking up and I felt like when I first was like moving around a little bit, like I just felt wires everywhere. That's the one thing I like was overwhelmed. Like if I looked this side, there was wires. I didn't even know where they were coming from. I don't know if they were just like resting on me, if they were coming out of somewhere. So I literally remember just thinking, I've just got to stay very still here. Like I can't move.
Yeah,
And then my parents and so said that they came in, and I have no recollection of that. They said, I feel like I could hear voices, but like, obviously when you're in that state, you just don't know. But they said that I was responding to them, but I wasn't looking at them or something. So,
right.
um, Yeah, and then the recovery, it's bizarre. Like I thought a big operation like that, you know, I'd be in hospital for weeks, but I was only in there for a couple of days, and then they sent me out. They're very quick to kind of get you out as soon as you're up and walking, and as soon as you can go to the toilet, then you're booted out really. And
So you don't catch nothing.
yeah, well, that's it. Like, but this is the thing. I was there, and I was thinking, I want to stay. I want to, you know, be in the hands of the people. If something goes wrong, like then at least I'm in the right place. But in hindsight, I understand why they do it. But I just felt at the time when I was like in that position, I was like, God, why are you trying to get rid of us for? I'm still in pain here. But yeah, it was one of them. It was a slightly longer recovery than expected, and then when you feel like you can do stuff, like I pushed myself a bit harder than I probably should have, and ended up with like other issues, if that makes sense. So it's just kind of like one of those things. If you are having a big operation, just take it easy. Like, don't go crazy. Like, you do need to rest.
You sure you got a nice big scar up your stomach where that operation was? I always tell lads who have that, tell them you got it in a knife fight and you won.
Yeah. Something crazy. Yeah. I wish it was something more crazy. But to be fair, like I was very conscious of it to start with. Like I was like, how like this is just not pleasant, not nice. But then I have quite a few tattoos, and then I had a tattoo on my stomach already that had been cut through, and they managed to piece it back quite nicely. And I was like, oh, that's very kind of them. Like, they literally like glued it as best they could. I mean, after time and stuff, after the kind of scar separates a little bit, it looked a bit more distorted. But when I first woke up, I was like, wow, they've done a bloody good job there. That's very kind of them. Like, they didn't have to, they just shut you up. And then since then, I've had it colored in. So actually now, like, I don't think you would overly notice it.
Yeah, I got you.
Like, it's more noticeable down the bottom, like underneath like my kind of like trouser line, but obviously no one really sees that anyway. So I'm a lot more confident now that I've got it kind of colored in, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's luckily I've never had to have it. I nearly did on my second one, but then it was seminar and they don't usually tend to do it. But saying that, I mean, you've been through I mean, I find myself, like I've said, Ryan, I find myself feeling very lucky to have a BEP and then EP, and it's done the job both. Well, first one didn't do it obviously because it come back, but
Yeah.
to go through all that operation and that, I mean, you've been through so much chemo and then that operation. I mean, to see you sitting there, I mean, to see you sitting there as well as you can be, is a miracle in itself. Really, I'm not religious. Don't get me wrong, but it is a curable cancer, and you know, hopefully, with the treatment you've had and the operations you've had, it sets a precedent for other cancers in the future, maybe, because they can look back at what they've done to you lads who had all that and say, well, it worked with testicular cancer, it might work with this. You know, that's the way I try and think about it. But yeah, I mean, you've obviously, we can talk about the emotions of it afterwards, and some of the, if it's all right with you, talk about some of the problems that you faced after, because as I remember when I was on treatment, it goes pretty quick, and you're in a world of treatment.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're out the door at the other end, and they go, okay, we'll see you in 3 months.
Yeah.
You're sort of like, why 3 months? Oh, well, we have to see if it's all worked. Because it could come back, it might not, but we're not going to. No point is checking you every day, so we'll see you in 3 months. So how did you feel a bit? I don't mean this nastily to the hospital; it's just part of cancer. But you're out of treatment, and you're sort of like thrust out, aren't you? Into we'll see you in 3 months type. How did you feel?
It was. I felt very lost, because when you're in the cancer world, like when you're in it, like you're in it, and you're seeing people every day, so you know that things aren't necessarily going to go wrong without you knowing about it.
Yeah.
And you got the full backing of everyone, friends, family, like everyone's there when you're in it. And then as soon as you're like out of it, not out of it, but like you're not having treatment anymore because you're just under maintenance, like you lose that connection with the hospital. So it's kind of like, but what if something goes wrong, and you start noticing little twinges, and I annoyed my nurse specialist. I still message her to this day when I still feel something wrong. I mean, 5 years on, I've got her number, and I literally message her like, And she's very good. She will literally get back to me quite quickly. But at the time, yeah, I remember annoying her so much with like all these little things that I could feel, and she would just kind of like put my mind at ease. She even asked me to come in a few times and sort of see me, which is really, really good.
Remember her name? You mentioned her name.
Linda, yeah, her name was Linda at Mount Vernon. Brilliant, legend. Yeah, she's great. But yeah, and I think also when you're in that situation, you don't lose that just lose that disconnection from like the hospital. But I felt like I didn't have that army of friends and family behind me as much as well. Like that, like the messages of like how are things going became less and less.
Yeah.
Understandably, I understand. At the time though, I just felt very kind of like I felt very selfish, and like when people weren't messaging how things were, I thought, hang on a second, like I've literally just been through the worst. Well, I am going through the worst time of my life. Like, why does nobody care anymore just because I put like like I'm free of cancer, or I'm not having any more treatment anymore, if that makes sense. So I became very like I changed a lot as a person. I became very kind of like I used to see like the negative side of things all the time. I used to be like, yeah, but what about my situation? Became very selfish and just very like not who I am at all. And I hated it because I knew I was like it, but I didn't know how to not be like it. It was horrible. That was the bit I hated the most.
I think that's common, Ryan. I think a lot of that. I tell a lot of lads, because I went through it myself. I used to get wound up. People who come in to see me, or I just see people afterwards. I see people and they go, oh, my car's just fell. It's MOT. It's going to be 800 quid, and you want to bite their head off, and you forget that that's a big problem to them if they haven't got 800 quid, and it'll play on their mind, and emotionally they can be really worried about it. But you forget it. But I think Ryan, to be honest, now you said that, I think most men do go into that sort of attitude, and it does take a while. When I started thinking, look, you only understand testicular cancer and the emotions if you've had it.
Yeah.
Then hopefully nobody's ever going to go through what we went through. So they don't. Me and you can talk all night and understand each other, and then there are these. I think that people just don't know what to say as well, because they're not going to walk up to you, Ryan, and go, "All right, Ryan, is your cancer back?" I certainly, before I had cancer, if I saw somebody with cancer, everybody go, that guy's bald and he's pale.
Yeah.
You'd go the other way. You wouldn't know what to say to them.
Oh.
I think everybody in the back of the mind is going, "Oh God, I hope Phil or I hope Ryan's going to be fine now. I know he's finished the treatment, but I hope he's going to be fine." But they probably don't know what to say. They're not going to go up and say, "Oh, what was chemo like?" "Oh yeah, all right, baldy." They're not going to do it, are they? So
yeah, I see that now.
They might just say, "Oh, what can we talk about?" "Oh, my MOT, Phil, my MOT." And you're going, "Oh, I'm sure it'll pass." But I don't think it's hard to understand, isn't it? It's
it really is. I understand it a lot more now that I'm out of it, and now I can see it from their side. Like I go, life goes on. Like it really does just go on, and you have to just be kind of like normal about it. And it did take us a long time to not think that way.
Yeah.
But when I started thinking like from everyone's perspective, I started thinking, wow, like okay, that makes a lot of sense now. So yeah.
People, but if we didn't have cancer, then we'd be worried sick about them. I mean, we still worry sick about our car MOT. Oh, please don't be hundreds of pounds, but a little less so. I'm a shrugger now, mate. Well, if anything serious like health on my missus and I'd worry, because obviously my missus had cancer, So, but I always say, Ryan, I don't know if you agree with me now. I mean, you've been a good, is it 2-3 years out now since?
Well, this nearly, this year will be my 5th year out. It feels like it's gone quick.
Yeah, but I don't know about you, but I've got some sort of only me and you maybe understand that sort of wisdom.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I feel like I've learned. I feel like I've been born again almost with like some of the thoughts and like the way I think about things. But in like a good way, like in a way that I feel like I understand like the priorities of life now. And when you said you're a struggle, like that literally was like, I'm exactly the same. Any kind of small problems, could not care less. Like I don't stress as much because of that. I stress less at work. I stress less, with the minor things. Like, I just feel more at peace with the world. But then on the flip side, you know, anything health-wise, you know, anything like that, that does tend to get me a bit more kind of like worried than it would maybe your average person, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like peaks and troughs.
It drives my missus mad really, because she's had skin cancer and all the treatment and stuff. She thinks I'm too laid back. I'm a sugar, but also what she forgets, and a lot of people forget, I was a soldier. I was a soldier in my teens. I went in the army through my 20s, and that attitude is what will be. You get a sort of a squaddy mentality of,
Yeah.
and I've seen some things in the military, you know, obviously, but yeah, if we can talk, if we can, Ryan. I mean, I know well, I've got you here. I'll talk about it. I know. Have you since been on testosterone treatment?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, how did that come about?
Well, courtesy of the main man yourself. You know, luckily got into
Oh
touch
yeah,
with you.
sure,
Knew like you knew a lot about it, and I didn't know much about it. And it was one of those things where I knew I wasn't feeling myself at all. I just was really down all the time, low moods, low energy, just was really like, you know, that stereotypical kind of like, you feel like half a man. Like, I just was down in the dumps the whole time, and I was doing nice things. I was spending nice time with like the people that I love the most. And I wasn't seeing life in that light at all. And I just couldn't get out of it. And then I remember you saying that, you know, could be, you know, testosterone, if you'd had that checked. And I was like, oh, I don't think I have actually. But then when I went and got it checked, although it was on the lower side, you know, it was still within the range, and I was very confused. But then obviously then you mentioned, but I didn't necessarily know what it was before that. So, you know, I went back to, I had these conversations with my GP and not my GP, sorry, my consultant. And he was just so understanding of it. I know that, you know, you did pre-warn me of some kind of horror stories that you've got to like, what you might have to say, or what, you know, some people just if you won't entertain it. And, you know, I was quite lucky that my consultant was like, you know, yeah, we can understand that after what you've been through, you may need this, which was strange because no one had ever at the hospital spoke to me about any form of, you know, testosterone replacement or some kind of, you know, testo gel or something that would help, you know, reboost that, which seems like it's a super important thing to talk about if you're dealing with something like testicular cancer, which is literally removing, you know, testosterone from your body. I found it really bizarre that no one had ever mentioned it, and I found it really just was like. But then when I mentioned it, he was like, "Yeah, okay, that makes sense. We'll try you on this and whatever." And yeah, so I started taking that again. Like, I started taking that for a little while. The first time I took it, it was a little bit weird. I couldn't really gather like. I remember coming home from work the first time I took it and literally going on a run, and I'd never done that for however long. But I felt so energized. I was like, this is brilliant. Like, this is what I used to do. I felt so good. But I don't feel like I managed to get the dose right the first time. And then also it got to a point where me and my partner were considering IVF, and I wanted to have a retrieval up to see if I could, you know, find anything from that. And you know, I remember finding out that like testosterone could affect the levels. So as much as I was enjoying taking it, because it made me feel a lot better, I kind of put it to the side in the build up to that, because I knew I've just got to fully focus on that. Like that could be the future. So I did that anyway, and had my retrieval up and whatever, and then I'm back on it again now, and again, like, it's interesting because I think, like you told me as well when we had this conversation, you know, some people think that it's going to be that kind of like you're going to feel like a superhuman experience almost, but it's really not. You know, it's almost a bit like an anticlimax in a sense where, you know, you're still not quite, you know, that full energy, but you feel better, if that makes sense. Like it's more of a kind of like a, you know, you just feel normal again. And I'm happy. I'm actually really quite happy with that.
Well, it's people who don't know. I campaign a lot for testicular cancer lads, and especially with hormone treatment afterwards, because I was left for years without testosterone treatment. I eventually got on it, and I thought I shouldn't have to be chasing this. And I've done lots of research, and you know, I try and spread awareness of that. You know, there's enough evidence there, Ryan. I mean, you've probably seen on the website that 3 out of 5 lads who have testicular cancer do have a hormone problem afterwards, but we're never checked.
Nah.
when they don't test our levels before, and I don't blame oncologists for this, because
No.
they're there to get rid of the cancer. They haven't got time to worry about our hormones. They're right. It's like taking a fridge to a mechanic. He only knows about cars, doesn't he? But yeah, but some lads do need testosterone, and some don't. I know plenty of lads who've still got loads of bounce, but if you're feeling the symptoms of low testosterone, which are tiredness, shaving less, putting weight on, not functioning downstairs very well in the bedroom department,
Yeah, yeah,
basically, and depression, and you're only young, Ryan. I mean, your testosterone's probably gone. You just left uni and it was up there. You're playing a lot of sport, testicular cancer, and they've removed the testicle. It's gone
yeah,
because testosterone slowly goes down as we get older. So say you're 25 here, when you get to 70, it's down there, right?
mm,
What's happened to testicles? And you probably tested the. They have the operation, take the testicle, which is part of the hormone making
yeah,
system, and then we have chemo, which affects the hormone system for life. It goes, shoo. So you're here
yeah,
where it should be when you're 70, at the age of 26 or whatever you were. So I don't. We're getting there. I'm getting more men to go and actually quit. I've tried to come from top down. I've
yeah.
tried to get to the NHS. I've tried to get to the endocrinologist, unless they don't want to know.
No.
So what I'm doing, I thought I'll educate lads like yourself and say, if you've got these symptoms, there's the guidelines.
Yeah,
Take it to your GP, take it to your oncologist, say, no, please just have a look at these guidelines, or listen to. So lads are going in, and doctors are going, you know quite a lot, don't you? Okay, yeah, let's check it.
yeah,
So, and more men are getting treatment, and I'm glad of that. But I'm certainly not a testosterone pusher. But if a lad's got the symptoms, like you had, then without testosterone, I can't get off the couch, mate. I mean, I'm a lot older than you. Don't get me wrong, but when I was young, when I was 30, when I first had it, Ryan, I was a boxer in the army. I had so much bounce.
yeah,
Oh, I'm older now, and I'm a bit fat, but yeah, and I felt really, really old very quickly,
yeah,
and it wasn't me. So when actually I had to fight to get taken seriously and check my hormones, and eventually they went, "You're slightly abnormal, a bit low for your age. Yeah, there's some testo gel." And I swear to God, Ryan, within a week, I had a bit more energy at work. I wasn't falling asleep on the couch at
yeah,
3. I could see the day out. I did have a massive drop, maybe about 6
yeah,
o'clock.
yeah,
Yeah, but I think we're getting there slowly. I mean, I've got a bit of a name of I've been blackballed a little bit by the whole community, mate, to be honest, because I go on about it. But if it's helping people, mate, it's helping people.
It's so important. I feel like, we are just like you said, that, you are the voice of the people for TC UK. Like it's incredible what you do. We would never like who would have told us about this if it wasn't for you? Do you know what I mean? Like we would have carried on
Yeah.
feeling like you said you felt old really quickly. That's literally how I described it to my friends. I said I feel like a 70-year-old in a 25-year-old body. Like I
Yeah.
feel like this is what it would be like as an old person.
Well, then
It's
again, Ryan, it's one of the problems with if you told your mates, "Oh, I'm on testosterone treatment now, I feel great." Also, testosterone has been demonized. You only ever hear about it in bad stories, so they all think you're a steroid pusher now. Or
yeah, yeah,
the amount of testosterone we have, which is monitored and it's on a prescription, is only enough to get us through the day. It's the
yeah.
people who are abusing it in the gyms that are taking 50 times the amount that we're giving
Wow.
them prescribed. So anybody, that's another myth that we have to get rid of. But I'm glad it's working for you.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
glad that that little bit of info I gave you helped. And then obviously you're younger and you can keep. I'm not going to do this forever, mate. So you can take over that little. So tell it. I mean, I was late to come into Cancer Lads because, like Ryan Farrington, the lad,
Yeah,
he watches telly. He watches. Did you see that about cancer? Did you see this about cancer on the telly? I don't watch telly, and I go on Twitter and social media. I post and get off because I hate Twitter. Right?
yeah,
But you Cancer Lads, I'm more aware of now, obviously, because we've been talking to each other.
yeah,
And he did tell me about it, but I wasn't being rude. I was just sort of like, okay, yeah, I've got my own. But
no, of course.
you set up Cancer Lads because, like me, when I first had it, you felt you wanted to help and support
Yeah,
men with a bit of encouragement. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, that's literally what it was. And it came about randomly because my brother and I got a random message on Facebook, believe it or not, asking us to be part of the ITV Full Monty show.
Right.
And we were like, first of all, we thought it was fake. And then like this person had like an actual like ITV email, and we were like, nah, this is so strange. And obviously just being young lads, we were like excited, like what, the telly, like what are we gonna be on the telly? And lo and behold, it was genuine. And we actually met like 14, 16 other guys who all either had prostate cancer, testicular, and it was all a case of some people were in active treatment, some people had finished, like we had just finished. And it was yes, the show part was great. It was great to meet the celebs as well, but the best thing for us was actually meeting the other men. Like that was the first time, like I was on an award with like other people of like 80, 90 years old. Like I had no connection to anyone. I didn't meet anyone else my age. It was horrendous. And it was the first time I'd spoken to people my age, and it was brilliant. I just felt a relief. I felt a sense of community. I felt a sense of just, oh God, normality. And it was such a nice feeling. And from that, like I said, I'm going to set up a group. I said, I'm going to call it this, and we're going, it's going to be for everyone. And it kind of like snowballed from there. And, I have a real passion for just wanting to like use the crap that we've been through just to, like I said, raise awareness for men. Men's cancers are really, I mean, we're getting more, there's more coming out for it, but it's just, it's not enough. The support for men is really, like I said, whimsical, really, it's pretty poor. And I just feel like I wanted to try and be part of a small group that could help try and build that. And I feel like I'm at a position now where I needed a little bit of direction where I wanted to go with it, because in my mind, I had like a million ideas, and like, I wanted to help and do everything when actually that's not realistic. So I'm kind of in a bit of a transition period of trying to figuring out where I want to go with the group, because in terms of like, I've got like a closed support group for guys, which is probably the worst part of the whole thing, if that makes sense. And as in like least interacted, not many people chatting and things like that. But what I've realized recently is actually, I am a guy who's been through it. If I want to know some information, if I'm a TC guy, I'm coming to Testicular Cancer UK to speak to other TC guys. If I'm a prostate guy, I'm going to Prostate Cancer UK to talk to prostate guys.
Yeah.
So if I'm wanting to know information about my specific cancer, that's where I'm going. I mean, I wouldn't come to my group because, there might be one or two of the guys that know that. But actually generally you're going to get a sort of loads of people from all different backgrounds going in, and actually like you relate less to that. So I feel like I'm coming away from that side of things a bit, in a sense that I want to do more just, again, sharing men's stories, raising awareness, and just kind of like building up like work with charities, just doing everything that I can in the community, basically. I think focusing on raising men's cancers and raising awareness of their stories is my priority now.
Just stand up and show the logo on your shirt for 10 seconds. So everyone can see that.
It's on the back. I think the logo's the back. Is it there?
No, it's all blurred.
Oh, never mind.
You've got your screen, your thingy on, haven't you? Don't worry.
I don't know how to take it off. I've had it on since however long.
There you go. That's better.
Yeah, that's probably better. Yeah.
No, that's good. So you like, it's not just testicular cancer. It's youngish. Well, men of any age, really. It's more like, at the minute, it's more like moral support, if you get me.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's a case of just kind of like, it was genuine. When I first made it, it was literally for everyone of all cancers, and it still is and always will be. But we don't ever like, kind of like, we're not like coming from a professional angle here. We're not going to tell you like, what treatment you're going to have. I can tell people from the testicular side of things because I've got experience of that. But if a prostate guy comes to me, I'm not going to be able to tell them about it. But what I would like to do is then, I've got so many connections in the community now that I will then direct them to somebody else. And I might direct them to other places that might support them in that way with that. But yeah, just like a moral support and talk to them about like life after cancer and kind of like what things I do to help me get through sort of those dark, like those things when hands are coming up, like all like the generally stuff more than anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. Like you said, I mean, I started this because there was nothing like that.
Yeah.
I felt I've had someone to talk to. I mean, this was 2002, mate. But there was one. I think there was one group online that was in America, and it was one of those forums where it's a bit of a pain in the arse to navigate through. I don't know what to talk. I mean, there were people that I could message, but if I'd have just had someone to talk to who's like my age of the UK at least, and just say, am I meant to feel this crap on chemo? Yeah, that's normal, mate. You'll be all right. Oh, okay. You know, is it just me who's lying awake at night worried? No, I still do, mate. You know, that's all right. You know, so that's what I say. Oh, but just got a bit too big, you know. But no, I mean, you're doing it for the main thing is, mate, you're doing it for the right reasons, because you've been in a pretty horrific situation, and you want, you know, deep down that you wouldn't want somebody else to feel alone in that situation, which is why I do it as well. So, you know, I mean, you sound like me 20 years ago. So when I finally throw this, mate, you can have it. When I finally
I wouldn't be able to do it justice. We'd need a team to manage what you do, mate.
no, it's, I mean, like, we both quit. I mean, like you, but you've got your normal job. I've got my normal job. I do what I love, but you know, I've going on. There's a few times where I've gone, I've had enough now. And then you get a message from a young lad saying, I'm scared, and you. What was it Al Pacino says? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back. So what's the future now, Ryan? What you thinking about yourself, and how you feeling, and any more challenges ahead, do you think?
Yeah, I think the big challenge for us coming up is my partner and I obviously sort of just going down the IVF route. And
you recently got married though. You recently got married though, didn't you? I saw that.
Yeah, recently got married. And now we're starting the IVF process, and I feel like that's just like the next big thing for us. Like, I've always wanted to have a family. I've always wanted to be a dad. However that may look for us, you know, it's taken us a long time to come to terms with, you know, first of all, it might not be mine in terms of like mine biologically. Then also we might not be able to have children. You know, it might not work. IVF might not work for us anyway. And, you know, it might be through fostering, adopting. But I just want to get to that point now. I just want to get to that point where we find out how it is and what it will be like. And I just want to have a family. So that's my main focus for the time being. You know, everything else gets put on the back burner for now. You know, this is like, I'm at that time in my life where this is what we want, and we need to do everything to make it happen. So we're currently going through that right now. And yeah, we're just going to keep our fingers crossed. I'm feeling positive about it. I feel like I haven't been positive about it for a long time, but now that we're going through it, I'm like, yes, you know, it's going to happen. You've got to manifest that energy. And if it doesn't, you know, we go again. If it doesn't work, we go again. We'll exhaust all of our options, and then we'll look to, you know, maybe foster or adopt. It's something that we'd want to do anyway, if we were lucky to have our own children. But if we can't, then we'll look at that route quicker than we would usually. So yeah, it's one of those things, you know, that's just our story. That's just the way ours will have to work. But, you know, I will have a family one day, and however that looks, I'm just excited to find out, really.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you the best of luck for that.
Thank you.
Just remember, if whatever the situation is, is if a child turns around to you when they're 20 and go, I absolutely love you, Dad.
Yeah.
More important than genetics.
Yeah, 100%. And I know from being a teacher, like, I know just building up that relationship with the class that I get after a year, like, I know that feeling that, you know, I'd be able to love a child no matter what.
Yeah,
sure. Like, it wouldn't matter.
Well, I hope it works out. But yeah, I mean, I think you're amazing, mate. I think you're doing really well. I mean, and your brother as well, of course. But yeah, what if people can find? What I'll do is put a link to. You've got a website, haven't you? Cancer Labs. I put
no, not currently, but I have been kind of in the background, being kind of like making one for like over a year now, but it's been on the burner for so long. I do
mine. It's a lot easier to do your own, isn't it?
Yeah, I just haven't like made it official yet. So I'm hoping that in the summer holidays I'll actually be able to put work to it and actually get it live. But just have the pages now.
Facebook, if they type in Cancer Lads.
Yeah.
Twitter and Instagram, Cancer Lads.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've got a support group as well. But if you're a young lad and you've been through what type of cancer, you want a bit of moral support, and you go speak to Ryan, and I've seen there's lots of lads in there who talk to each other. So, you know, I mean, to be honest, Ryan, you do it the same reason as me. You want people to feel good about themselves. So, hat off to you, and I hope obviously me and you are going to keep in touch, but and I'm serious about that. When I'm old, knackered, you're taking this off people.
I would take it with open arms, absolutely.
Yeah, Yeah, but I've really enjoyed talking to you. This interview's been
Thank
good. And maybe we could do it in a year's time and see how you're getting on and that.
Yeah,
And
that'd be nice, a little update.
yeah, and I'm so happy that you got married recently and you're feeling better. And I mean, that's, people will see this maybe and think, oh, that's extreme, but don't worry, it's rare to go that extreme through the stem cell and the operations. And most lads have the bep and the fine,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, hat off to you, mate. I mean, like I said, I've seen you about doing stuff, but don't get me wrong, I'm not. What's the word? I don't ignore people. I'm just,
Yeah.
I, I
No,
don't pay attention to. I'm so busy with the testo stuff and
100%.
I don't get. It's just.
Yeah, honestly, I get it a lot. I feel like I'm exactly the same with people I speak to sometimes. I feel sometimes I'm not fully focused on it, but because I've just got, I mix people up as well. I'll speak to someone. Somebody came up to me on one of the events. In fact, it was the event that I ran for TC UK that not long ago. Somebody came running over to us. He was like, "Oh, it's me from the page. It's me," and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
in my head, I mixed up his story with another Simon, and I was getting so confused. And then I had to literally look back and be like, it's just because there's so much going on and you're focused on so much, like on other things, that it's easy to just mix up. But
Yeah, I mean, I speak to so many men now. I leave messages. You probably see in our group. I'll now and then say, look, if you spoke to me recently and I've forgotten your diagnosis, what stage you
yeah,
are, please don't, because I'm getting. I mean, we got the phone line as well on our website.
yeah, wow,
Yeah, but don't get me wrong, I love doing it,
yeah,
I'm there for. But yeah, Ryan, it's been great talking to you, and hopefully
thanks,
this is
man.
good and we don't have to do it again. But we
Yeah.
should keep in touch with meet up actually. I mean, I know you're down south, and I don't like to go down south because they're a bit strange, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're not like us Northerners, but I go up north quite a lot, and actually, I've got a lot of friends in Liverpool, which is near to where you are. So,
Yeah.
I keep it
Where are you from? Were you born near Spennymoor? Spennymoor? Spennymoor?
close. It's in between Horton and Durham.
Right.
Yeah.
I won't go. There's a lad. Right. I hope he forgives me for saying this, but got to know a lad in the army from Spennymoor. We were in Germany, and he was one of the most handsome men you'd ever look at. All the girls used to go, "Oh my God, look at him." His name was Curly, but he was the biggest nutbag I've ever
Yeah.
met. He was so funny. Nothing was ever serious, and I was on my corporal's course with him, and I had to share a room with him, and I meant to be revising my corporal's work and all this, and I just couldn't because we ended up like we had what are those things that you flick? What are those?
Oh, oh, slingshot.
Yeah, we had two slingshots each, and we were slinging jelly babies at each other's heads all night. He was mental. He was such a lovely. He's one of the nicest, kindest blokes I've ever met. Yeah, and he was from Spain. Every time I hear your accent, I think of him.
Think of him, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not far from me, to be fair. Well, where I'm originally from, yeah, not too far
Well, I
at all.
love lads from the northeast and girls because I was in the army with them, and there was a sort of like a relationship between Merseyside people and
Yeah.
Geordies and Mackhams, all that. They sort of got on.
Oh, 100%. Any Northerners, it's just that
Yeah.
instant connect, isn't it, really?
I think it's because it's a shipbuilding town, isn't it, with docks and
Yeah.
we don't take much serious. But like I've said to her, we're going to finish the interview in a minute. But I was talking to her. I don't know what it is about the lads from your area and Newcastle and Sunderland and everything, but I'm pretty convinced that when you join your junior school when you were a kid, you'd spent the first 6 months learning how to fight. All rock on.
Yeah, everyone was a bit of a joke.
Don't know a soft Geordie or a Mackham. And if there was any trouble, because I'm quite little, I'm only 5'6", how we scout out, do we? And they'd move me. Yes,
Yeah.
stop moving here, kid. They come back and go that and just carry on talking as though nothing was going to happen. I'm like, you're all mad.
It's funny because I feel like, especially moving down south, I was like, our schools just sounds so different to the ones down here. Like,
Yeah.
it's very, very. I know times have changed a lot as well, but like, it just felt like a different world up there. Like, that was just the norm up there. To be fair, it was weird.
Oh, yeah. But it's yeah. Well, we'll meet up soon, mate. But thanks for this interview. I'll put it about, and you're Ryan, and find you at Cancel Lads. I'm gonna put this on YouTube anyway, and you do it. But, yeah, respect to you, bud. Respect, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. So, thanks, Ryan. Well, maybe we'll speak again in a year's time. See how you're getting on.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan to me.
Cheers, Ryan. Thanks, mate.